Good afternoon. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that we hope will help improve your life. I'm Stu Reed. This is my co-host, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave.
Hello. Let me just sweep the room.
Dave is at a fancy screening room in Manhattan. Is that right, Dave?
This is the Paramount screening room. And of course, they have all the posters and the pictures up on the wall, which is why I walked it around.
Mhm.
And just saw the Marley film, which turns out to be excellent.
Yeah. One Love, I think, is the name of it, right, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One, and Rita helped on it as a producer. And the reason it's good, beside the fact there's some superb acting, is it's showing the back and forth and what he had to struggle with, where the record company was coming from, how he reacted to the fact that politicians were being killed right and left in his country, which is why a lot of his songs are about peace. And yeah,
Okay. Many of our listeners know that Dave's partner is Jenny Bourne, filmmaker and videographer. And often they get to go to these fancy screenings and report on what's going on. But let me move to our guest. We got a very special guest with us today. Alex Bores is the Assemblyman for the 73rd District of New York that serves areas including Murray Hill, Turtle Bay, Sutton Place, Midtown East, and the Upper East Side. He's a fifth generation New Yorker who was born and raised in and around the district. He graduated from Cornell University and has a master's degree. Alex, welcome to Community and Technology.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I understand, just kind of, talking to you before we went on air, that you've done have some legislation introduced in New York State around AI. So, Dave Burstein, my co-host, has been studying AI for a couple of years, and he's done a kind of deep dive into the technology. And it seems like every week, no matter what our topic is, AI somehow creeps into the conversation. So, tell us about your work with AI and what's going on.
Absolutely. You're right. It's AI is changing very, very quickly. By way of brief background, I came into the assembly in 2022. I had worked in tech my whole career before that. I actually have a master's degree in computer science, which means when I was elected in 2022, I became the first Democrat at any level elected in New York State with a degree in computer science.
Oh, wow.
And when I talked about that in the campaign, some people would say, well, what does that have to do with government? Government's a different sort of thing. And then ChatGPT came out at the end of 2022, and I've never gotten that question again. People have seen the role that AI plays. And so this past year, we were able to pass legislation to protect New York elections from the impacts of AI, requiring labeling of any deepfakes that campaigns put out, as well as providing campaigns the ability to sue to get injunctive relief if someone makes a deep fake of a candidate near an election, which enables both a way to pull down the things that are fake and a process by which we can prove that things are actually true. But that was just the first little touch of it. Now we're very much focused as a state both in how we can keep New Yorkers safe from dangerous technology that might have bias or discrimination, making short decisions, how it might impact things in the long term, but then also taking advantage of the upsides. So where can we encourage good research in New York? Where can we help to spin out new businesses and new ideas and democratize that opportunity so that people in every zip code can have access to it? And so I have, I think, 10 AI bills that I am working on this session and happy to walk through any pieces of those. My colleagues probably have 100 more, but there is a lot for us to do here.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to let him talk first, but I didn't know he was out of computer science or now. It's actually a very strong program Did you
So,
study in New York or
so,
upstate?
so Cornell was my undergrad. My master's in computer science was from Georgia Tech.
Oh, I know a lot of people there. And Georgia Tech is right up there, top 10 in the world. And this gentleman had many choices that pay a lot better than being an assemblyman.
So what made you,
Uh,
they're just curious, a little bit of side issue. What made you come to the assembly and decide you wanted a civic career?
Yeah, it was an opportunity to serve my community. I had always been in tech, but it was always government tech. It was building systems to make the government more effective and more efficient. And this seat opened up unexpectedly. You know, I wasn't like a party choice or groomed in any way for the seat. It was a true open opportunity. And I had conversations with friends, one of whom said, "Look, you're always talking about how you're downstream of policy, trying to fix bad policy with tech. Here's your opportunity to go upstream and actually design it right the first time. And also, you know, run, you don't know if you're going to win. And if you do win, if in 2 years, in 4 years, it's not effective, you're not changing things, you can quit. But you can't in 2 to 4 years say, now I'm going to run for the open seat. You know, things only happen when they happen. And so, you know, I decided to run now 3 years ago. I very much enjoyed my first term in the assembly, where along with those AI bills, we also passed a cloud computing bill to help government have more effective services. We passed a bill to enable tech workers to retain intellectual property for some of the things they develop on their own time. And then, you know, 10 other laws that I did that don't have anything to do with tech. So it's been really fruitful so far and excited for what the future holds.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, we invited you because AI has a lot going on, and you're bringing that into politics, and you give us all the details. But I didn't know that you're out of the startup scene in New York, and there are a whole lot of people don't know what it's like. So why don't you talk about some of the companies you worked with and some of the other companies that are out there?
Absolutely. The New York tech scene, and in particular the startup scene, is large, it's booming, it's growing. And I think people have an older view in their mind that all of the exciting things are happening in Silicon Valley. But we have a lot of growing companies in New York. We're seeing investment in New York grow even faster than it is in Silicon Valley. And partly that's because people want to live in New York and talent gets to decide where they go. So I started my tech career at a company called Palantir. I joined it in 2014 when it was only, I think, about 1,200 people, and it was a small private company. It's now part of the S&P 500. I think there's 1,200 in New York alone, and it helps. It started mostly helping government, and now also helps companies to organize their own data. So finding ways to better serve its constituents or its customers. I helped the Veterans Affairs better supply their hospitals, have a track on what supplies they are using and when they are needed and how to get them there. I helped the Department of Justice understand what was happening in the Great Recession with mortgage-backed securities and the data they were seeing from that, so they could go after nefarious actors, and also help them shut down pill mills. And Palantir ends up working on a huge variety of things, from just commercial instances through keeping our warfighters safe. I was there for 5 years as that company grew. I then did a series of startups afterwards. So I went to a startup called Merlon, which was focused on anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing, helping banks and other large financial institutions understand the risks of profiles that were people who were signing up for accounts that might be tied to money laundering or to criminal groups. And I worked out of the offices of a VC group based in New York, that called Workbench, that has had a long-term commitment to startups based in New York. and they've grown a real ecosystem around them. We also had a VC group called NICA on the board and DC VC. NICA is also obviously based in New York. And after a couple years there, I went to another startup called Promise, which was focused on helping people get benefits that they were entitled to, or helping cities and states sign people up for COVID relief or for payment plans for utilities or things to help people, where you'll often find legislators will allocate a whole bunch of money to help a problem, but not think about, well, how do people actually get access to that money? What's the application look like? How do they know that they're eligible for it? How do we get it out the door to them? And it's a real tragedy. You see sometimes help that's allocated, but then not spent, all because you didn't set up the system in a way that allows people to get what they are entitled to. And Promise would work with the utilities, work with the cities to actually get that money out the door, to get people what they were built on. And that was led by an incredible CEO and founder who is still there, Phaedra Ellis Lampkins, who I think has raised the second most out of any Black woman founder. She's just really built a dynamite company over there, and it's still going strong.
Alex? Do you remember her name?
Phaedra is her name. The company is called Promise.
Mm-hmm.
And that company is still going really strong, and I'd probably still be working there if not for this open seat that popped up that led me on a different direction and running for office.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Well, let's give people some sense, because I know what you're talking about, but I don't think many people know, like, how many of the people who qualify for food stamps in New York actually get them. Do you have a couple of nice data points to explain this?
Unfortunately, I haven't looked at the New York numbers in a while, and I know that New York puts a lot of effort into it. I know that some other states, it's less than half, or it's sometimes about 30% of people who are eligible for specific benefits end up getting it. It depends on the program, and it depends on how long it has been there, how many restrictions there are, but there are a number of obstacles to people getting it. One is they don't know that they're eligible. Two, even if they are told it's eligible, sometimes they don't believe it because they've had so much experience with government promising things and failing that they just don't even try to put in an application. Sometimes they go to put it in and you find it takes, 10 pages, 50 pages of paperwork in order to submit a easy application. And they might be asking questions in a way that doesn't really make sense and no one's helping to fix. So what we would do at Promise is we would go through, what does the application look like? What is how can we simplify it, right? Like, we shouldn't be asking income 5 times. Like, we can probably just ask it once in a specific way. What's the easiest way through this? What's all the information that the city or the state or the utility already have on a person? So instead of asking them to fill things in, if we already know that they are eligible for one benefit, maybe we know that, we can take off half the questions for this form. And then we would actively go out and we'd text people. Or we'd put out ads, or we'd let them know, instead of just them relying on coming to an office and hearing about it. We'd say, hey, you're eligible for A, B, and C. Some of these things require a company to do. Some of these are replicable by any city government. And so one of the bills I'm actually working with the city on for next year is to enable city agencies to share data amongst themselves solely for the purpose of getting people signed up for benefits. So if you sign up for rental assistance, right? Why do you need to apply separately for unemployment and fill out the exact same information about your income, about your sources, et cetera? And so can we help make it easier for New Yorkers to get what they deserve, which not only benefits them, but also in a complete win-win, will save the city and state the money of administration because we're duplicating work 12 times.
Now, does that, what you're talking about right now, Alex, does that relate to the cloud computing initiative that you mentioned earlier? Does that factor into that? If not, tell us about that.
Yeah, so not directly, although it can help. The cloud computing initiatives comes from, there's different technology you can use to store data, right? For those who maybe don't listen to the show all the time and are not as technically up to speed, for most of us, we store our data like on our laptop, on our cell phone. But when you're dealing with the applications of all New Yorkers, right, you end up storing data elsewhere, and you can either buy a big server, a big set of storage, and own big devices. The state has this. We have big data centers that are storing this data. Or you can kind of rent that storage space from someone else that handles the administration of it. And that's called, in this case, cloud computing, when you are borrowing from someone else computing power to store data or to actually process things. Sometimes it's best to own the infrastructure yourself. Sometimes it's best to rent it out. When you rent it out, you tend to have more flexibility. You can get larger or smaller much easier than if you have to buy a whole new server. But there are pros and cons to either approach. But the way the state was going about these questions before this bill was not with a plan. It was sort of haphazard, and often it would be just easier from a procurement standard. It'd be easier from the agency trying to buy things to just default into buying another server, buying more hardware. And so what this bill does is said, first of all, you should have a plan. You should write down ahead of time when it's better for you to use cloud and when it's better for you to actually buy hardware. In creating that plan, you should consult with the experts we already have in the state government. There is a group called ITS, Information Technology Services, that is filled with experts in this space, and there are other government agencies should be taking advantage of that and asking them for help in designing it. So it's a pretty light touch bill, but if it's actually implemented, it means that it will have much better data management and much better speed of improvement. And what that means for your daily life is hopefully your websites won't be so out of date. Hopefully we can roll out new programs without 12-month or 24-month delays. We will be able to quickly change things. And so you asked how it might relate to the benefits aspect, right? Though that's a different bill, it might make it quicker for us to modify these programs and have them be much more user-friendly if we've done the work ahead of time in the background to set up our technology.
So that bill just been proposed, or has it passed?
That one passed, and the governor signed it.
Excellent.
That takes effect, I think, still in a few months from now. But that is on board, and hopefully people will start to see benefits in their government services.
Excellent.
You came from the private sector into government, which means you're dealing with a whole lot of people. How capable are the civil servants you met in New York State?
The civil servants are actually quite capable. I thought you were going to ask about my fellow legislators, who all have their own talents. But the civil servants who are hired to do this work are actually remarkably talented. I've gotten to interact with many of them, and I'll be honest, I came in not necessarily expecting that. But I've had really good conversations with people who work in cybersecurity that really know their stuff, or work in database management that really know their stuff. We obviously have had failures of government to innovate and to deliver things. Often, I think that's not the people. I think that's the systems. I think we have our own internal processes that bog down and get in the way of new technology and new innovation, such that we can't react to the new exciting tech, or it takes us too long to do that. And so I'm working a lot with the New York State CIO to figure out how we can empower the workers we already have, how we can get access to training so that they can level up, but also how we can bring more people in-house. I mean, one thing that government has done for far too long is hire outside contractors, say, oh, we need this expert outside. And sometimes you do. Obviously, you can't have all the expertise in-house, but we have too often hired outside and allowed people outside the government to gain expertise, to often charge more and get a profit, and that's great. But then we don't benefit from that. The next project, we have to hire out again. And if we were to allocate some, again, not all of those dollars, but some of those dollars that are going to outside groups into just hiring the workforce and training the workforce we have, it would save money, and over time it would speed up our ability to do things. So again, it's about figuring out the right time to do each. But too often I think we've given work, to firms based out of state, to firms that like do this regularly but don't actually build more for New York.
Dave, we're just about at the halfway point. I think we're going to take a break here. We're speaking with Alex Bores, who is Assemblyman from the 73rd District in New York City. And he's a computer specialist, an engineer with an advanced degree in computer science. And we're talking about a lot of the legislation that he's involved in proposing and implementing in New York State. Dave, you want to say something before we go to break?
Yeah. When we come back from the break, I'm going to ask him a number of questions, how people can get involved in what's going on. Artificial intelligence is the most exciting technology of my lifetime, and I'm old. But people don't know how it works if they're not part of it.
Okay.
Awesome. Excited to talk about it.
Great. Okay, you're listening to Comedian Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Dave Burstein and Stu Reed with our special guest, Assemblyman Alex Bores. We'll be right back after a brief musical break. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back. Comedian Technology, Stewie Day Burstein, our special guest today, Alex Bores, Assembly member from the 73rd District of New York. Alex is heavily involved in technology, computer science, and in particular AI. And I think, Dave, you had a couple things you wanted to throw at Alex around AI.
Okay, first, there are lots of ways to learn things, and AI has them all, including free lectures from MIT and a lot of fine universities in New York. Since you went to Cornell and then to Georgia Tech, you know some of this. Why don't you talk about NYU and Columbia and other places that are interesting?
Absolutely. And one thing that we didn't discuss beforehand is I actually, in between my undergrad at Cornell and my master's at Georgia Tech, I took some math classes at Hunter College. I took two different classes for credit that helped prepare me to apply and eventually go into computer science. So,
Forget about Columbia and NYU because Hunter is much more interesting there.
well,
NYU has one of the 5 best computer science departments in the world.
yeah.
Yano Kun is one of the very best. He didn't get the Nobel Prize this year, but he might have. He's that good. Columbia is very jealous, but there's some quite good people there. But Hunter is interesting. That's where I wanted to go, because one of the questions I had queued up is ChatGPT, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google know about NYU and Columbia. But when I asked around at City College, where we actually do the show if we do it live, apparently they're not getting the same response. I know some of the City College people are pretty good, but a whole lot of people don't know that. How can we get these AI companies to go into the City University?
It's a great question. I would say before we get off of Columbia and you give Jan LeCun a shout out at NYU, I should also give a shout out to Jeanette Wing at Columbia, Executive Vice President for Research there, who was instrumental in the state passing Empire AI, which is our new system where we are going to actually buy a whole bunch of really advanced computers and allow Hunter and CUNY and SUNY, as well as Columbia and NYU, and I think Cornell is the last private, to do academic research much cheaper here in New York. And maybe that's one of the ways that when the advanced labs start seeing more and more advanced research coming out of CUNY, coming out of City College and Hunter and these places, they're going to be forced to pay attention. I was happy to see many of these labs open and now opening offices in New York. OpenAI just opened one a couple months ago. So there'll be more natural points of intersection and collaboration. But you're right. The work that's happening at many of these institutions is absolutely top notch. I think CUNY in particular has always been undervalued and underappreciated with how many students it has and the amount of research it puts out there. Maybe the fact that AI is as flashy as it is and as exciting as it is an opportunity to really raise up some of the incredible things that are happening there.
Well, you went to part of CUNY. Before
I
you
did.
went to one of the best tech universities in the world, Georgia Tech, you spent some time at Hunter. How many people in your classes are likely to have the skills that OpenAI or Google DeepMind or Microsoft Infinite projects? And do the people there have skills?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And if we care about getting more opportunities in the community. Uh, how do we make that happen for the kids who didn't have the money or the chutzpah or the scholarship to go to Columbia?
Yeah, it's something that I know the new president of Hunter is thinking a lot about. So Hunter College is along with it being a place that I went as a student, it's also based in my district. So I talked to them quite a bit, and they have some exciting developments that they are tying in. They have a computing program that is really strong. I think, we're open to suggestions and finding ways to collaborate more across these different areas because the students there are really talented and they have this commitment to New York being here, and they are available to do really exciting research. And so it's one of the things every time a company opens a new office in New York, they ask around, hey, how can we be involved in the community? And I tell them, look at the students, look at the talent that is here. It's a message I delivered to OpenAI when they recently came here. But so for anyone listening who is working at the companies, take a look around the students we have here. And to any of the universities, if there's ways we can help to promote, to publicize, to host hackathons, to get that information out there, I'm all ears. Please reach out. Let's work on ways to do that together.
Dave, I know you've talked a lot about having workshops for young folks to come to about AI. Is there some way that maybe Alex can help make that happen?
I would love to do that. I've participated in a lot of hackathons myself before I was in elected office, and especially, we can put out some government data that people can play with, but I think it'd be most fun if it directly came from problems that many of these companies are trying to solve, because that's how you show off the talent here. But I've been thinking about other ways to get people involved. My office is reaching out to a few universities actually to figure out if we can sponsor something like this. We're talking to Hunter, we're talking to Cornell Tech, based on Roosevelt Island. But this is, I'd love to hear your ideas, Dave. And if there's something that's easy to plug into,
Dave,
let's
you
do
might
it.
mention both Dave and I are on the board of the New York Internet Society. So I'm thinking maybe there's a way to collaborate. Dave, let me toss it over to you because this is really your area.
We're all for it, and we're trying to make the internet better. Well, but not just for the people who know about Cornell and OpenAI.
Yep.
Who do you work with? Stu has been putting in community networks possibly longer than anyone else in the United States.
Well, I don't know about all that, Dave, but we have been in the trenches laboring for a long time, Alex. When I say we, myself and my technology and business partner, Doug Frazier, we've been working for decades in community-based technology with a particular focus on residents and public housing throughout the
Wonderful.
5 boroughs of New York City. And as you probably know, that's a humongous population, well over 500,000 folks, half the population unemployed, living at or below the poverty line. So, we help. And actually, I won't say we help because we partner. Our whole model is to partner with folks on the ground as opposed to parachuting in with solutions or whatever. No, we go to folks, we partner with them. We talk about, how the kinds of issues that they need solved and help figure out ways to do that. So that's kind of our approach to community technology. And, talking to Dave over the last year, 18 months about AI, we're really interested in how we can involve, maybe young folks on the ground living in public housing that may not, they heard about AI, but they don't really know ways that we can involve them in it and pull them in and start to get them acclimated and maybe they might go to an NYU or go to Hunter College or whatever once they kind of get their feet wet. So that's kind
Yeah.
of what I'm interested in.
That's incredible work because the key is just getting people access,
Yeah.
like talent is equally distributed by zip code, opportunity is not. And what you're doing to get them access to the internet and then also, to get them access to these their first times playing with AI. I mean, kids are so capable in figuring this stuff out and finding new ways to use it. It's why, I was really happy when New York City initially they banned ChatGPT in schools. But the only effect that has is it means students that don't have home internet never get to play with it, right? And so they reversed that ban, which I was happy about, because people need access to play with these things and learn about them. For the last decade, 2 decades, we've been told, "Hey, learn how to code, and you'll get a job." And learning to code is still valuable and good, but we're seeing a lot of these boot camps now have declining job placement rates. Why? Because AI can code. And so it's not just, hey, learn this one skill and you'll definitely end up there, right? It's still valuable. Trust me. People who want to learn to code should learn to code. But what I'm saying is there's new jobs being created, not involving code, but involving AI. How, being a prompt engineer, figuring out how to apply different models for data analysis. And so the more people have exposure to it now when they're young, the more capable they'll be because the jobs that are going to exist in 10 years will look very different than the jobs that exist right now. But it starts with having experience with the state of the art as it is.
We think of the people going into AI as PhDs who are potential Nobel Prize winners. And there's a slew of brilliant people. I'm not joking there. There were 3 AI people who just got the Nobel Prize for cause. What about biomedicine? What have you seen there? I'm thinking of it because the chemistry Nobel Prize just went to Demis Hassabis, I can't pronounce his name, and John Jumper of Google DeepMind, who have an almost unbelievably successful product to analyze the structure of proteins.
Absolutely. Oh, go ahead.
New York is very strong. In Manhattan, we have 3 of the top 10 best hospitals in America, which means among the best in the world. We have Columbia, NYU, and Mount Sinai, where I go for everything these days. And I know there's been a lot of economic development money and a lot of projects to support biomed in New York. Is AI going to be part of that? From the point of view?
Absolutely. It is very much the future of a lot of this research. I mean, for some people, AI really jumped into their consciousness, as I said, in 2022 with ChatGPT. But for people who are focused on the field, what you just referenced, what the Nobel Prize was given out for was for a discovery in 2020 that was even more mind-blowing. Figuring out how proteins folded was an important problem for designing drugs and treatments to cure a wide variety of diseases. But it wasn't something that we could predict. So before AlphaFold got on the scene, figuring out just how one protein, the structure of it, how one folded would take years and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then Google comes out with this AI that can predict it with some 90+% accuracy and do it almost instantly. So it was not surprising they got the Nobel Prize this year. It was this mind-boggling advance. And that's just one aspect that it'll be able to help with. When you think about how it can find new potential drugs by looking over patient records and seeing, okay, drugs in general really help these people, but not those. And can we find ways to target it by looking at structures and molecules that are similar across different drugs? To find patterns that others are not looking at. I mean, the potential for
Let's get some practical questions into, I
please.
guess. Yeah,
Please.
but that's our interest. Stu, tell me when we're 3 minutes away from
Okay,
the.
we've got about 7 minutes now before we got to close up. I had a question. Is there any funding coming from the state to help with some of this access and reaching out to folks to help train and become aware of and get involved in some of this AI and some of the technology that you're working with, Alex?
Yes, but there can always be more. So we put a big investment towards Empire AI, which is going to allow the universities to do a lot cheaper research and help to move that in New York. We also obviously directly fund CUNY and SUNY and their programs, not just for their fully enrolled students, but people that do what I did, which is take an additional class, even if you're not fully enrolled. Um, and, for example, I directly gave a grant to this organization called Pursuit, which trains people from non-typical backgrounds in how to code and helps get them that first job working in the software industry. And a number of my colleagues have put out similar grants as well. So we're always looking at ways to get more people the skills that are needed and plugged into this ecosystem, but the opportunities are endless, so we can always do more.
Well, last question. We can go in this depth, and you have a lot to say about it. Somebody who doesn't have experience, doesn't have fancy degrees, but is smart and willing to work. Talk about the opportunities in AI, in particular in New York, including telling people how big some of the companies are in New York.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you're talking about companies. I mean, Microsoft has tens of thousands of employees in New York. Google has tens of thousands of employees. There are so many jobs and opportunities at not only the big labs, but a lot of the smaller startups. So we started this conversation talking about VCs and startups in this scene. But I would say even before that, if you are just at the start of your journey and where do I start for AI? I'd say, first of all, think about how you learn best, and then go get the resources in that way. So if you learn best from videos, there's a lot of lectures from universities. There's also a channel called Three Blue, One Brown, which just released a series on YouTube on explaining AI. If you learn best talking with people, I mean, I think listening to this radio show is a good one, but also one of the cool ways to learn is open up ChatGPT or Claude or Notebook LM, and just chat with it. Just do it and have the experience. And one of the cool things about these LLMs is you can say, explain this concept to me. And then if it's too complicated, you can say, wait, do it a little simpler. And if it's too simplistic, you can say, hey, actually, I understand that. Like, give me more of the nuance. And you can have a custom teacher from an LLM to explain LLMs to you. And if you
do that, classic way to do that is you can tell ChatGPT, and I'll give you a way to get into it free. Give me an explanation that's suitable for an 8th grader.
Yep.
And it will. If you're not
Absolutely.
getting, you want to figure out what a hidden Markov variable is, ChatGPT and the others can give you in any language, right? We're now seeing literally hundreds of languages becoming available.
Hey, break that down for us for folks who don't have any idea on how to start. Where do they go and how can they start using these models that you're talking about with little or no money?
The easiest way to do that is to go to a place called Poe.com. I actually pay them $20 a month because they give access to Claude, Grok, ChatGPT itself, Runway, another New York company we haven't talked about, that's one of the 2 best makers of software to generate video by AI. And you can go at Poe, they have
You say
9
polls. How do you spell it? Pouga. What are polls? Can you break that down?
Poe as in Edgar Allan Poe, POE.com.
Okay, POE. Okay, .com.
They buy the access from all the big guys wholesale and make it available retail. And they have a fairly generous free offering. So you don't have to try to figure out, does Claude make it free? The answer usually is no on that. Or which of the 8 different ways to access OpenAI, ChatGPT, or Dolly for images? It's all at Poe for free. Best way to get you started. In
That's
terms of
POE.com.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're really good. In terms of learning it, one thing we should be doing at the Internet Society, and I've started doing some of it, is put in classes that are not about all the hype. We're not going to teach you how to come up with a neural network that can beat the world Go champion or can extend the work on proteins to DNA. Why don't we ask our guests to wrap us up? What's the important takeaway for people who don't have the access now? And is that practical?
I think the takeaway is this is big, this is important, this is only growing, but it's also changing so quickly that you don't ever need to feel behind. Anytime that you hop in to learning this, you are as relevant as anyone else. The only mistake you can make is not hopping in and trying to learn it. So this will affect every part of the economy. These are really useful skills that you can have. And whether that's going to Poe.com, which I didn't know about. That's a really cool thing, Dave. Or whether it's signing up for a class or directly talking to any of these LLMs or jumping in on a hackathon, whatever choice you make here to learn these skills, like it is a good choice. And there is economic opportunity everywhere, but especially in New York for people that have these skills.
Stu, we don't have any more time, do we?
No, we're out of time. I'd like to thank Alex Bores, Assemblyman for the 73rd District in New York, first for the work that you're doing, Alex. That's some really important stuff that you're doing, bringing the technology and applications to New York State services, and it sounds like you're educating the legislature about this technology and how it can help improve lives of New Yorkers. And secondly, thank you for coming on the show and talking with me and Dave and sharing with our audience. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me and for the work y'all are doing to get access to people. It's really important work.
Okay. Thank you again. Dave, any parting words before we sign off?
There's infinite hype. There's infinite possibilities. There aren't infinite possibilities for any given individual, but there's so many different things in the field that almost anyone can find a niche.
Okay. You heard it here. Comedian Technology, Dave Bursey and Stu Reed. Special guest today, Alex Bores. Every Wednesday, 5 p.m. on WHCR 90.3 and on the web at WHCR.org. Tune in. Just might learn something. Thanks. Good night.